Wade and I got married in 1969, and then we left to go to Europe, and he played basketball and coached in 1970. Upon coming back in 1971, we decided to stay in Louisville. He had been given a contract to go back to Europe, but at that time, I was pregnant, and he got the job at Aaron's High School as a head basketball coach. And at that same time, I went out to the University of Louisville because I did want to still work. And the Office of Black Affairs was being formulated, and I became Director of Educational Services for the very first Office of Black Affairs. And I stayed in that position, it's really funny, for 2 years. And in that capacity, as a side, I would go to Atlanta to help learn how to fill out financial aid forms for our students. And so one day, Dean David Lawrence, who was the Dean of Students, and Blake Tanner, who was Director of Financial Aid, walked across campus and they said, "You are now our new Assistant Director of Financial Aid." I said, "What?" Well, there wasn't anybody else on campus or in the community who knew really how to fill out a financial aid form and had been through the training that I had. And so my next job at the University of Louisville, which I stayed for 17 years, was as Assistant Director of Financial Aid. And it's really funny because when I went in to ask Dean Lawrence, I said, "Okay, my responsibilities are what?" He said, "Assistant Director of Financial Aid, you're also the cheerleading sponsor, and you will be the University of Louisville's representative on the board of the Urban League." And that, I was at that point probably 24 years old, and to have the opportunity to serve on the Louisville Urban League board, he really started me on a path of community involvement, and I ended up being on the national board of the Urban League. And so, but for that opportunity and starting in the Office of Black Affairs and having the opportunity to be Assistant Director of Financial Aid, I can truly say that there's not any other entity, probably except for our major suppliers, that have played a more important part in the Houston household professionally, financially, and civically than the University of Louisville.
That's great. Thank you so much. I want to talk about your 17 years at U of L and in that role that you were kind of thrown into as a 24-year-old. I'm sure it was a lot to take on right there. When you look back at those 17 years, what were some of the more rewarding experiences you had?
I think the ability to impact young people's lives. At that particular time, the university was making the transition from a private institution to a public institution. We were still small enough that somebody from Corbin, Kentucky could walk into Bigelow Hall and say, "I want to attend." And you had Harold Adams, and you had people who we could get them admitted. Harold could get them to housing. They would come up to me and they could get financial aid. But I see young people every day now. They're in their 40s and 50s and recognize the difference that an education made, and inspirational words, and just encourage them that they could do it, not to give up. And that is really how I transitioned from being a historian into college student personnel, because here I was in this sphere of service without the academic preparation for it. So I ended up going back and getting my master's in college student personnel, so that I could be aligned and academically prepared for the career that was now I'm not going to say thrust upon me, but given me. And now that I look back on that, the total experience, I can't really think of anything else that I would have rather done. So I think it was the ability to impact, encourage, counsel, mentor, um, fuss, mother, sister, aunt, all of the students who came across our paths. And I will say that many of my team members, even in business, tell me that we run the business like it's a work study program or the so I have translated and incorporated much of what I learned at the university into my business life, especially the financial part of it. You know, it provided the counseling, but it also provided knowledge of financial aid and regulatory things that I really could not probably have acquired anyplace else.
I love it. I think when I was reading your bio, I mean, you have been so generous with giving your time and donating resources and being a mentor to others in our community. Why do you think it's so important for others to give back? You know, why is it important to give back to the community that you're a part of?
Because you're a part of that community, and we are only as strong as the weakest link. Dr. James Greer Miller, who used to be the president of the University of Louisville, wrote a book. I mean, it was huge. I mean, the book must have been about 1,000 pages, called Living Systems. But the book always, I didn't read the book, just a summary. But in it, he started with the amoeba and went to the complex world organizations. And his point was, we're all interrelated. We all are dependent on all of us. And we've all heard that we're only as strong as all the boats lift, we lift each, I don't know what the quote is, but you know what I mean. And I really believe that. And having been raised in an athletic household, my father was a coach at Central High School. My mother was a teacher. At that time, he would bring all the players home. Our car was torn up because he would haul and pick up. And so I was raised in a household that was community oriented, that was spiritually based. And I think the combination of those things leads you toward understanding that we are a community. And from a spiritual point of view, we're all going to be in heaven together, all 12 tribes. He's giving us an opportunity to work out these issues here. But there's nothing more important to me than community, and trying, because I believe in the basic good of people. And I do believe that if we can all understand each other's perspectives, we don't have to agree. And that's why I think a college education is so important. It may not be for everyone, but it is extremely important. And it is important that universities continue to explore and require diversity, not only of people, but of thoughts. Kind of went off the path, but that's okay.
No, you're doing great. Thank you so much. This is a question that I personally am interested in. I know in talking to all of our alumni award winners that all of these successful people, and I mean, they're wildly successful in their own industry, but the common denominator is they all received help along the way from somebody. You know, they all had a mentor or somebody that played a special role in their life to help them get to where they are. Can you tell us about some of those people in your life that helped pave the way?
Sure. I think there are different ways that one paves the way. I think that there was a professor at the University of Louisville, William McLaughlin. We used to call him Dr. McLaughlin, but I don't think he really was a PhD. And he taught a course in comparative education, and he talked about the purpose of education. Was it utilitarian, or was it more for the liberal arts? And while that debate is still going on today, his thinking motivated me to appreciate the benefit of a liberal arts education and diversity of thought and experiences. So even though he may not have directly impacted my professional development, that course probably was more important to me than any other course that I have taken throughout my post-secondary education. Interestingly enough, another person that was a mentor and who formulated much of my professional development was Blake Tanner, who was my boss. He was the director of financial aid. And, you know, he would always say, especially in interviewing, we'd have all the questions and all of the steps that we would have to go through. And he would always say, but does this person bubble? And he really wasn't talking about the exuberance of the individual. What he was really talking about is this individual compatible with our culture. And so he played in that 17 years of being my friend and my mentor and my boss. The operations of that office, the efficiencies of the office, the openness to address things that were problematic and to meet them head on, formulated much of my leadership style. And then I think from a mentor perspective, another U of L alum would be the Jones family. David Jones Sr. and Jr. and Mary Gwynn. Their commitment to community, their commitment to education, and their philanthropy, their willingness to not, you know, some people write the check but they do time, talent, and treasure. And so those were three of the individuals who impacted probably my philosophy of business and of philanthropy. As far as mentors in business, I really didn't have a lot because we were fortunate enough to enter a field 30 years ago in which there were not many African Americans, certainly not many women. There was probably more hesitancy in open dialogue. You know, that's when you had the Ford suppliers, the Toyota suppliers, and if you were one, you weren't the other. And now all of that has gone away. So our journey in the entrepreneurial world was probably not very similar to other people because there weren't a lot of people doing what we were doing. But I will say and give a lot of credit to Ford Motor Company for investing in three young. I often think, why did they do that? We didn't have any experience in this industry, but what they were committed to was diversity and inclusion. And they wanted their supplier base to look like their customer base. And so they took a risk. A lot of people took a risk on us. Banks took a risk on us. They must have seen something that we didn't see in ourselves. And that's what's so important, I think, when you mentor and deal with people, to be able to bring out the best of individuals. And that's why a university and professors and the custodian and all those people who make it tick are so important. I go around in circles a lot, but that's
Oh, okay. You're doing great.
I'll try to get back to the...
You're crushing it. And the goal is to give us enough that we can put together this video. You're doing an awesome job. So I have a couple more because I do want to be mindful of your time, but you're to talk to that I want to keep it going. One of the things that you'd hit on was when you first arrived on campus, what was the position, what was the office that you were opening?
Office of Black Affairs. It's now probably the Multicultural Center. I mean, it's gone through the Office of Black Affairs, Minority Affairs, and now it's, and that is indicative of the diversity movement. It probably started with Blacks, African Americans, and has evolved, through, as well it should be. But that's where I started, Office of Black. But I think it had one other location, but it's been located right by the University Club for decades.
And of course, that's right where we were located before we sent home to work. So we know it well, and we're actually working with your friend Valerie Combs on.
Yes, because we're getting a new facility.
Yes, and so we're helping her.
She's contacted me about that.
She texted me about you last night.
Oh, did
to say hello. Well, wanted to talk to you and see, in your opinion, I mean, you said things have moved, things have evolved since you got there. But can you talk about how things have evolved, but how there's still work to be done in those areas on U of L's campus?
Oh yeah, I think there's always work to be done, and I think that I am so excited about Dr. Pudding and Neely and her advocacy. And I remember she probably had not been in Louisville. She could not have been in Louisville more than 2 weeks when she met with a group of African American leaders. And I knew she was special at that time. And I kept saying, is she real? Is she for real? And so I think that while there is work to be done, we still need to increase diversity on campus, especially among our faculty and staff. It is important for individuals to have people who look like them, who bring perspective, different kinds of perspectives. But the university has always been embedded in the community. I don't know that people understand, from the School of Education to the Health Sciences to Criminal Justice to the School of Social Work, how many individual faculty and staff members are involved in different projects. Probably put it all on a metric, not only would the public be surprised, but I think fellow faculty members would be surprised. And so I am constantly encouraged, and yet I remain to be their critical friend. And especially after this pandemic and the economic fallout that there's going to be across the board in community, and especially in institutions of higher learning, it will be even more incumbent for us, and I call University of Louisville us because it's just a part of my life, to be intentional about what we are doing, and to maintain our intentionality. University of Louisville was in 1962 one of the first to integrate and bring my husband Wade Houston, and for yay for that I will always be appreciative, because without bringing Wade to Louisville, I would never have met him. Therefore, I never would have had Alan, Lynn, and Patty, and Natalie, we call her Patty, and 15 grandchildren. So there are so many ways that I could say thank you, University of Louisville, for literally all aspects of my life.
I love it. And that's why we need to keep you around the University of Louisville for all that great thinking. Everywhere I've seen you in public over the years, at press conferences and meetings and important events, and you're always smiling. Where, I guess, when you think over your career, with your business, your time at U of L, where did you have the most fun? Where were the happiest memories when you think back?
I think that, I think that the happiest memories, they're wonderful memories in what I'm doing now, what I've done for the last 25, 30 years. But I think the happiest memories were in Crawford Gym, where I would, I worked, in Bigelow Hall, Crawford Gym. So you may not remember, but the distance was no distance, right? And I can't imagine this happening in 2020, in 2020. But we would come to work. I would deposit, if I had a sick child, one of the three was sick, I would deposit them on Wade's couch in Crawford Gym, where Judy would take care of them and give them the medicine until 2:45, when I would have to come get them, because practice was going to start at 3 o'clock. And then I can't imagine a world in which that would happen now. Or the Christmas mornings in which we would be in Hawaii, and there's a 6-hour time, and we would be in Denny's suite having Christmas. We would have to bring Santa Claus, the tree, the toys, and explain to the kids why the bicycle that they asked for was not under this tree, but would be under the tree at home. So when I think about those glory days from 1970, whenever Wade and Daryl went, until we left, those are unforgettable moments. And then too, formulated a management style. So it's, it was all of those pieces putting together in a puzzle that really has helped us be successful in the business world.
Wow, that sounds like awesome times.
Well, they were. They were.
If you had a message or any wisdom or advice to give incoming students, maybe you were just talking about how hard it is, in 2020 with everything we're going through, and some people might not see higher ed in their future. Or
yeah.
Could talk to somebody that was maybe like you and coming into college and maybe unsure. And what advice would you have for today's college?
I would, if I were, I would tell the freshman Alice Houston to not think too much, not get inside their heads. I remember I was a really good student, and I wanted to be a math major. And right off the bat, first semester, I got a C in math. I'd never gotten a C before in my life. And you come to college with these expectations of aspiration. Many times you may be the first generation going, or you're trying to keep up with those successful people who have preceded you. There are going to be times that the going gets rough, and that you have fear and doubt, and you begin to say, have I made the right decision? I want them to put all of that out of their head and go to that place where they have always gained confidence. That might be internal, that might be an external friend, a grandmother, and to remember that they were put here for a reason, and that this is part of their path, and to keep pursuing that dream that brought them to the university in the first place, and that this is a place that you can explore options. Maybe math really wasn't, as you can see, it really wasn't my path, but I stayed a course and finally found that path. And I promise them, if they stay the course, they will be fine, and their days will be as successful as they make them.
That's a great piece of advice. I did have a question that I'm asking a lot of folks is what does, so you are our alumni of the year, like the whole year of all the graduates, you're the one for 2020. What does that award mean to you? What does it mean to you personally?
I can't even describe what it means. I mean, it is such an honor. The word thank you seem insufficient, but I am so appreciative, and it's probably it's probably the highest award I've gotten to be an alumni of all of an institution that has as many departments, who has graduated so many people. It's an honor, and it is a very prestigious group that I am very, very proud and humbled to be a part of.
That is great. Well, and like I said, we are so honored that you accepted the award and that we can honor you this year.
Who could not accept?
But we were glad that you did. Another question, I always want to ask people that are so successful like you are, because it seems like it'd be really easy just to be living on a beach somewhere and, you know, cash it all in. What keeps you, you're still so active in the community, and you're still, you know, still so working. What keeps you motivated, fueled, and getting up in the morning?
I think people, and there's a lot to do. There's a lot of, you know, people sit down. I can't, well, my family would say I'm hyperactive, and that might be true. But the truth of the matter is, I think that as long as you have the mental capacity, the physical capacity to give and to be involved, it's part of my personality. I love people. I love to see other people succeed. I want to see this community be successful. I love Louisville. I mean, it's probably, even today, in the midst of all that's going on, it is a well-kept secret. And I want to be able to make a difference in people's lives, because people are ultimately parts of families, and families are part of community. And the better each of us, as I said before, the better each of us are, the better the whole community will be.
Well, that is so true, and we are so happy that you're part of our family.
Thank you.
So now I'm at the end of my questions, but I always want to ask at the end, if was there anything that you had that you wanted to share? Was there any other wanted to get out?
Go kart. What does Neil do? This is that it?
Yeah. Throw up the L's and say go cards.
Go cards.